All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of What's What BR. We've got our friend Garret Graves back with us. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing well. How about you?
I'm keeping up. It's just freaking hot. Is all I can say.
Yeah, it's one of
So
those 2 months a year where you want to pool, right?
it's oh my god! Like I've got one, and I don't. I've got in it. It's 90 degrees. It's like taking a bath. It's the pool's not even doing anything for me. It's amazingly hot, and so I don't know how I'm surviving. I was at my kids' soccer practice Sunday. I've got my twin boys. They were there. And about the end that their team was wrapping up, all these cars started showing up, and like grown adults, your age, my age, are like showing up, and they're like lacing up cleats, and then they start going full on like soccer. And I'm like, I looked at one of the, I'm like, there's nothing in my life you could give me, bribe me to make me want to go run around and play on a soccer field, much less in the winter. But when it's 100 degrees out, like I'm just not there anymore. I'm not there in my life anymore.
Yeah. No,
So.
it definitely is tough times. It's one of those things where I go out and go work in the yard and everything else. It's to be a very deliberate decision. It's all right. I'm going to be sweaty, smelly, stinky the rest of the day, and you really got to commit. So no, it definitely has been a rough summer.
Yeah. I've heard we actually have talked. Technically, we've had more rain
Yeah.
this summer than we did even in 16, and it's causing. I've heard foundation problems for people.
Yeah, but
You
more
know,
rain and in many cases coming down faster as well, which, of course, while it may help temper the temperatures a little bit, the amount of water that we're getting has absolutely stressed a lot of our drainage systems. And, homes in the 2016 flood that you mentioned, you kind of thought that was the high water mark and everything that was possibly going to flooded then. But just because of how quickly some of the rain has come down, we've had new flooded homes in the past probably about 3 months. Never ever flooded before. In some cases, been around for decades, and new flooding areas, which is just awful because that's one of the worst things that can happen to a family.
no, I did it in 16, and then I personally flooded again back at May when I was one of those guys.
Yeah,
It was
those
like,
rain bombs. Yeah, yeah.
it was just. And I talked to some, and you hear some people, and it'll lead us into. I want to talk a little infrastructure, but before I had people like, it's crazy. The city needs to do something. The state, it's like, look, how much can you really expect? When you're getting 15 inches of rain, in less than 15 hours, there's only so much, you can really do, right?
Yeah, and one of the challenges here, is that you're well aware of, but one of the challenges is that we're pretty flat. If you're in these other places that have mountains and everything else, the water can evacuate a lot faster, but we're pretty flat. That makes it harder. And then also the other issue that you mentioned is that the area's been so saturated that the ground's just not absorbing a lot of water just because it's been so wet this year. But I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about infrastructure, though, Brennan, because we do have some really major initiatives underway right now that I think are going to make some improvements. So
Yeah. So tell me, that was right where I was headed.
Right.
Infrastructure. We talked a little bit last time we talked about it. There's been some progress and things are moving along. So
Yeah.
what's the word?
Well, first, I want to be clear that things are moving too slowly, and that's something that's important to reiterate. Things are moving too slowly, but we have projects that I believe we've talked about just north of Baton Rouge. The thing that is really amazing is you have about 16 parishes that all drain down into Lake Maurepas, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Bourne, and out into the Gulf of Mexico. They don't drain into the Mississippi River that's right there. And so we're trying to change that. So we have a project that all told is going to be about $450 million. All the money's in the bank. Dirt's turning right now. Everything's happening. And it's going to change it. It's going to take water and start allowing this area to drain into the Mississippi River. So it's going to pull major flows during peak storms off the Comite River, send it over to the west into the Mississippi River. And that'll give more capacity to the Amite and Comite rivers, which is where, we all drain into. I got another project that's about $250 million, and it's going to clean out and enlarge some of the rivers and bayous like and creeks like Ward Creek, Jones Creek, Bayou Fountain, some of those major waterways or drainage canals that flow right through the city of Baton Rouge and through our neighborhoods that don't have enough capacity. So it's going to clean them out. It's going to enlarge them. In some cases, do concrete revetments, wider bridges and things like that to where you can evacuate the water faster. And if you have water backing up on your street or at your little catch basin, the gutter, this is going to help hopefully to get that water to give more capacity to just drain faster out of our neighborhoods. So that one's moving forward. We all told have about $3.6 billion in new flood protection investments that are fully funded and going to be moving forward. And so we're not where we need to be. We haven't been where we needed to be for decades, but we're on a path. Money's in the bank. Things are happening. And I think you're going to see some of the major improvements within the next 2 years.
It almost sounds like it's good to be in the drainage business right now.
Yeah, it probably is a good place to be right now. There's a lot of dirt turning. There's a lot of the cleaning out of the pipes and ditches. And there's people who have those marsh buggies that can go in the ditches and cut down all the stuff and remove the debris. Those guys are pretty busy right now.
Yeah, no, and I think, and I try to bring the other side more bluntly that other people can. This isn't a problem. I guess you could say we created it, but it's, with all the development that we do, you got developers building left and right, that nobody notices. It's like, hey, we got to catch up. Like, we're behind the times, as you said. We issue a permit, go build the neighborhood, build this. And it's, now it's kind of, I'm an old software guy. We would call this, it's a technical debt, that we need to kind of go back and pay off. This is some drainage debt that we've got to get through. But it sounds like you said, dirt's turning, money's in the bank. Just let us get through the process.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. And you can look at the census numbers came out recently, and you can look over like the last 2 decades. We've had some of the fastest sustained growth in the state of Louisiana, right here in this capital region. And so, parishes like some areas of East Baton Rouge, Ascension, Livingston, even over on the west side of the river, West Baton Rouge and Iberville, you've had a lot of growth. And you're exactly right. The infrastructure investments have not kept pace, which is why we have such awful traffic. But it's also why we have some of the drainage problems that we do. So the good news is that these investments in drainage are going to be changing that. It is going to take a bit more time. And I think the better news is that we're not just going to get caught up to where, we should have been in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, because a lot of the projects that you and I talked about date back to those decades. But we actually have a good bit of money, in fact, about $1.8 billion now that's set aside all for kind of perspective. We don't need to be, planning for the past. We need to be planning for the future. And so it should be investments that actually get us ahead where we need to be.
So how, not to put you on the spot because it's just my ignorance, and I'm curious, we say money's in the bank, projects are moving. Yeah. Some of them we've got to get moving. Is that, federal dollars that work their way in, state match dollars, and then they're sitting there, and then the state's got to find we got to go find, Billy with the Traco and, get him, work. Like, what's I'm just curious, like, what's process?
Brandon, so what we did is we as soon as I started this job, we started working on trying to get infrastructure investments. We've had some really big successes, but one of the things that we found that works really well is instead of just kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and saying, all right, we're going to go after this funding from the Federal Highway Administration or this funding from the Corps of Engineers, is really looking at the problems and then tailoring your request to the right agency, the right place. So for example, we've got hundreds of millions of funds coming in through FEMA that go to the state and the parishes, and they actually administer it. We have tens of millions coming in through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is Department of Agriculture. They give the money to the parishes, and that's some of the fastest money we've seen move so far. The Corps of Engineers, we gave them $1.4 billion. They largely control those projects like COMET, like what we call the Five Bayous Project, the one we talked about, the Ward Creek, Jones Creek, Bayou Fountain, and then Beaver and Blackwater Bayou in the northern part of the parish. The Corps of Engineers largely controls those dollars. We have a program through Department of Housing and Urban Development that has given the money to a state agency, and that state agency is running it, and in some cases granting it out to levy districts, water boards, or parishes. And so, honestly, it's a lot of different mechanisms by which this money is being executed or spent, which I think works better, because if you put $3.6 billion all on just the state or just the Corps of Engineers or whatever, it would be too much. And so the fact that it's being distributed or dispersed out through different entities, it gives you more capacity to execute. And I think it's going to actually make things happen faster. But last thing, the whole process that the federal government uses to develop and deliver projects, it doesn't reflect the urgency of some of the projects we need. They're talking about, 10 to 12 years to build a new bridge crossing the Mississippi River, the Baton Rouge, the Five Bayous project, that one they're talking about maybe 4 years to have it completed. The Comete project, it was supposed to be 2 years. They backed it up to 3 years. That's too long. So look, this whole process that's being used, it's not efficient enough, and that needs to be changed. And we're trying to do that. We have legislation to do it. But I'll say it again. Good news is money's in the bank, different entities are executing, and progress is being made on a daily basis.
I think it was maybe you and I, we had talked about it, that some of the processes, you've got to go to bat and fight, tooth and nail for all of this. But then it's like, there's some federal red tape, where it's like, hey, you need to send us, form XYZ, but you better not email it to us, because we can't, because the law says you've got to, carrier pigeon it over, or, it's got to have the red seal. And it's kind of just like that. Some of these procedures at the federal level, they're antiquated, and it's almost like, how do you do both, right? It's like, hey, we're gonna go work on this drainage, but hey, I got to get this guy to accept an email from me at the same time.
Brandon, I think you and I talked about this last time. I will never forget, after the 2016 flood, these people would be calling the office and, hey, I need help with FEMA, or I need help with SBA, or whatever it is, and we'd have to tell them, hey, under the Privacy Act of 1974, here's what I need you to do. I need you to get on your computer. I need you to go to our website, click this link, fill out this form, print it out and sign it, and then mail it to me. And you can imagine these people are like, hey, did you not hear me when I told you my house is under 10 feet of water? My computer's under 10 feet of water. And you're just like, ooh, yeah. And it's, 2016. I can do all my banking. I can order through Amazon. I can do whatever through my phone. So we actually changed the law to where now you can do it all through your phone. And so, yes, processes are antiquated. One other example that applies directly to projects, the average environmental review project, and look, what we do, we need to, if we're building roads or if we're building flood protection projects, we do need to consider what is the impact to the environment and make sure that's being analyzed. But this process went from probably about a 2-year analysis back when this law was passed to today. It's about 7.5 years. And, Brandon, being somebody who built these projects and very involved in these for almost my entire life, I'm pretty familiar with building these things, turning the dirt. And, I know that a project like that normally takes a year or two to build, the average kind of infrastructure project. And you're going to take 7.5 years to do the environmental analysis. People have really just kind of lost sight of what it is you're trying to achieve with that environmental review. And they've hung all these ornaments on it, sort of to where, now you're doing all of these things that have nothing to do with actually looking at the potential impact or benefit to the environment of these projects. And so those things all need to be fixed. They need to be recalibrated. I'll say it one more time. We've got to have a project development and delivery process that reflects the urgency of the very projects we're trying to deliver. Yeah,
I'm trying to think, not to beat up, government. I'm not that guy, but it's like, if I had in my business, if you green light me on a project and I say I need to do a study and it's going to take me, I've got a 1.5 year project, but hey, we're going to study it and we're going to look at it for 7 years.
How long are you going to be in business?
It just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
You're going to go bankrupt because your customers, they'll find that unacceptable. And so, as taxpayers, as citizens, we need to deem that unacceptable as well. And that's why we have legislation, about 60 co-sponsors from across the country trying to fix this process. Because, look, you can't go to somebody whose house is flooded and say, yeah, you go ahead and rebuild. Here's your flood insurance money. And in 10 years, we're going to have a new flood protection project for you and everything will be fine then. You're like, wait a minute, what? I'm not going to reinvest my insurance money in this house that just got 6 feet of water in it, put my family back in this, vulnerable situation, and put whatever little savings I have left back into, furniture, appliance, clothing, whatever in this house if it's not safe. And so, that's an example of where the project delivery doesn't reflect the project urgency. And those things have to be aligned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think sometimes people lose sight. They get caught up in all the, checking the boxes and going through. It's like, well, what were we originally here to do? We're here to help. We're not here to make bureaucracy. Let's just get to the mission. Let's get the guy back in his house. You talked about the guy filling out the form. I remember there's a internet provider. I remember I was on hold, very predominant, and I'm waiting at one point in time with a problem, and the hold music is telling me, it's like, if your internet is down, please go online, to such and such.com, for faster support. And it's kind of like, really? Like, who's recording it? Like, who's not how is there this much of a disconnect between like, this is the tech support for your, internet is down, and you're telling to go online? I guess I could go on a phone, but that just, sometimes people just miss the boat, on it. As they say, common sense is not very common. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So tell me, what's going on? We talk about all this infrastructure, kind of we're sucked into, like this, greater Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge, we've got a lot of stuff in the outlying areas. But, if we get into the outlying areas, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, I want to touch on, that you've been real instrumental in putting together, is that if you go 50 miles to the north, finding internet's not as easy as you would think it would be, even on a cell phone at these points. Like, there's literally people that need internet that are in the middle of, we talk about food deserts, in the middle of the city where you can't get fresh food. Like, there's internet deserts. Like, if you go out in the middle, of nowhere, you're not getting a high-speed internet connection. And unfortunately, it's a way of life now. It's not it's not like, hey, we need the internet because we're looking at cat photos. It's things that people have to have.
That was a good one. Which, by the way, my daughter takes my phone and literally looks up cat photos. But in any case, in any case, so one of the things that this pandemic has really highlighted is how critical high-speed internet connections are. The parents that had to remote in from home for work, and of course they had to work. The kids that had to remote into school to go to school to learn, and of course they had to learn. And so even at our house, where we live in Baton Rouge, but our house, whenever the kids were on and my wife and I were on, we ran into problems, and we'd have to be like, hey, somebody's got to shut down. And so you said 50 miles outside of Baton Rouge, but look, the truth is, when you get up to East Feliciana or St. Helena, which, look, that's not 50 miles, that's right outside of the parish. Even Livingston Parish, of course, Denham Springs and Watson, you got pretty good internet options. But when you start getting out further over to that east side, you do have a broadband desert in some cases. And so what we've done is we've been working together with a bunch of different agencies. And look, I want to be clear, I don't think this is the ideal way for this to be done, but billions of dollars in federal funds have been put toward different broadband programs. And I'll give you some examples. One of the things we found during the pandemic was that you had these rural communities that didn't have good healthcare services. And so people were, they were scared to leave their house. They didn't know if they had COVID or not. And they didn't have access to a doctor in their rural communities, or they'd be concerned about coming into a city and going to a health clinic because they'd be worried about getting exposed to COVID. And so telemedicine became a big deal. But again, if you don't have the internet connection, you can't do the telemedicine. So we provided funds to help improve and expand telehealth capacity. Another example is what we talked about earlier, the schools. Well, kids had to remote in some cases still do have to remote in for school. And so if they don't have an appropriate broadband connection, they can't learn. They can't engage with their schools, their teachers. And so we put funds into school connectivity. You have funds that were provided for stimulus funds to the parishes and to the state, a total of $5.1 billion. Those can be used for broadband. And so all together, there are like 24 different programs that could go toward broadband connection. There's even a program for those that are making lower wages, where they can get a $50 a month stipend to help cover internet costs and things. And so, but the deal is, in some cases it's schools, in some cases it's parishes, in some cases it's hospitals or banks or other entities. And so everybody's got to be working together to make sure that we're putting together the right type of broadband investments to connect as many people as possible. So we've been trying to pull together all of the players, the stakeholders, the community members that need broadband, and getting everybody together parish by parish to make sure that we're efficiently using these dollars.
No, I've got a history in that. And one of the things that I learned when kind of, digging into these, people not having internet, I always try to make it where people can tactically get it. I think people get it now with working from home, and I think they get it, with their kids. But, the two stories that always came to mind when, I was involved here was that you're getting a lot of people that, let's put it this, I'm trying to find an easy, delicate way to put it. Like there's some financial groups, that are out there that if you don't have enough in your retirement account, that they're forcing and saying everything you need to do, you don't get, an advisor to talk to. You got to go online, and do it. Yep. And it's two problems I see there. One is they need the high-speed internet access to be able to even access their money. But then two, more than likely, that's an elderly person that needs, education on how to do this. So we're literally saying, you don't have enough money to talk to someone, so you're going to have to go online, and handle this yourself. Yeah. And then the other story that I'd heard was, I never would have made this leap, but if you're in agriculture, if you're, growing crops.
Yeah, precision farming.
Yeah, well, it's the precision farming side of it, but it's also like, okay, at the end of the day, I've made, I've grown this corn, like people are wanting to see it before they buy it. And so you're now having to drive, all the way, to these other places. If you don't have the ability to, to get a video or to take the pictures, it's changed. And so people don't think about it, but it's like I said, it's not just cat memes anymore. It's people legitimately need this high-speed access, and it's not available. Yeah. Everywhere.
No, it's a great point. And look, as you well know, things are getting even more connected. I mean, you can buy refrigerators and air conditioning control and door locks and everything else. I mean, your alarm system, everything is connected online. And so those people that don't have the access, they're just getting further and further insulated, isolated, disconnected from technology, from our community. And so, I mean, it's as fundamental as being able to, get online, to email and communicate with people and participate in school and work. But even some of these newer technologies and safety systems, the people who have healthcare monitoring and other things. I mean, this is really, really important technology, and we do need to make sure we're making strategic investments of those dollars and helping expand that connectivity around the state as best we can.
Yeah. My office building, we have our access control to get in and out of the building. If you don't have internet, it's not going to work. Yeah. You have to have, they don't even give you the option for the dial in. So as a perfect segue, one of the things I wanted to hit, because you told me some really cool stories, talking about internet and stores and ordering, is you sit on the, I don't know the appropriate title, but the FAA Aviation committee chair. Obviously, I don't keep enough with politics, right? So I'm not sure.
All good. Yeah.
Throw a bunch of TLAs out there, or 3-letter acronyms, and it'll be right. So FAA committee, something, but you're in charge or looking, overseeing intricately with some of this, what everybody, the kind of the Jetsons of the world, where we're talking now drone delivery. And this is real. This is not high-tech companies just, doing advanced stuff. We're actually getting to the process where it's now government's getting involved, regulation. How does this stuff work? Like, this is happening, whether, people's like, oh, I'm gonna order something that's going to get delivered with a drone. Yes, it will happen. It's it's not if, it's when, at this point, right?
So how cool is it that you can, right there from your phone, you say, you know what, I got a hole in my sock, I'm going to order some new socks, and tomorrow it's at your house. I mean, to think that 10, 20 years ago, people would be talking about that. You'd, be like, no way. And it's happening. But what is that next level? What does it look like? Well, just last week, I was with some retailers in Baton Rouge and some technology companies that brought their toys here. And we're sitting right outside the store and demonstrating a technology where instead of going on and ordering from Amazon and getting it the next day or 3 days later or whatever, you could go on to your local store. You could say, hey, I want this. And literally within minutes, that can be on a drone and it can be delivered to your front door within minutes. So for those people that are impatient, I mean, you're maybe going to have a way to scratch that itch. And so we sat there and we watched the technology. We watched how it worked. You could see you could either have it totally autonomous where you just put in the address and it goes and drops the package at the front door. All sorts of other ways of doing it, including remote piloted and everything. But just remarkable technology. But Brandon, you're a pilot, and here's where the complexity comes in. The national airspace in the United States is some of the most congested in the world, some of the most complex in the world. It's not just the helicopters and the airplanes. It's a lot more complex than that. With we're now talking about commercial passenger space travel. You've got different sensors, that weather sensors and other things that are out there autonomous. I mean, it's some of the most congested, complex airspace in the world. And so we're talking about taking something that doesn't have a pilot and it just has sensors or cameras or what have you, and adding it to that complexity. Look, the most important thing isn't convenience. The most important thing is safety. And so we've got to be very, very careful, very thoughtful, very deliberate about how to integrate these things into the airspace. Convenience is great, but we can't sacrifice safety. So how does this interface with airplanes, with helicopters, with other types of aircraft, and making sure that all these things are communicating with one another, they're recognizing one another, and that we don't put people in harm's way as a result of us continuing to strive for that immediate satisfaction or that next cool technological advancement. So that's the key thing. We've been working with the FAA, working with the pilots, working with the airports, and many, many other stakeholders to make sure that that's all done properly. Then you run into things like, you know what? I don't want to have this loud drone flying over my house, or I don't want something flying over my house, unless it's X feet above, and it's kind of, out of mind, out of sight. And so, just thinking through all of those things, the privacy, I don't want some drone flying over my house if it's got a camera on it. All of those things are things that really just add to the complexity of safety. And so we've been working with the FAA trying to figure out how you do all these things. But the cool thing is technology exists today. We've been out there with numerous different companies and seen this demonstrated. They're going to be doing some additional pilot programs where they're choosing stores around the United States. And we're pushing them to choose a few in Louisiana to try it out, but just to kind of go through and demonstrate this to help figure out what else do we need to be taking into consideration. Again, the sound, the privacy, the altitude, making sure we're properly integrating in with pilots and others, proper distance from airports, right elevation, all those things to ensure that it's a safe experience and it actually works the way we want it to.
Yeah, no, I've talked about this at length, and I'm really into the tech and I'm really liking it. The question always, kind of bring up to people is, it's like, okay, so you bought your house, right? Or you bought your lot, and it's there. How high did you buy up to?
That's right.
Where is it yours and where is it someone else's? At what point does it, make that transition? And it's kind of like, it's like, well, it's not, everybody immediately goes, oh, well, it's, you can build your house. Okay, well, no one told me on the lot that I built, even in my neighborhood bylaws, it doesn't say that I can't build a 20-story house.
Yeah.
It's like people never thought, about it. So it's like all this openness.
No. I think that's your banker that says you can't build a 20-story house.
100%. He doesn't even want me in the house I'm in right now. We had to do that.
No, it's interesting because and you talk to some people and they're like, yeah, I own up to heaven, and then you get other people who who may open up their freezer late at night and say, wait a minute, I'm out of Bluebell vanilla. And they're like, you know what? I want that drone right here, right now. And so it really is interesting, but it's something that we can't rush into. We've got to make sure that we have good public participation, just hearing from people. And that's why I think doing some of these very small, limited scope pilot programs, it begins to, let people experience it and giving feedback on what works, what doesn't, and making sure that all considerations are taken into account as you begin developing these rules. But as you said, I mean, look, this is where we're going. And so we need to make sure we do it right, do it safely.
Well, and I'll leave you with this. Here's the last. Well, the problem that we build here is we now make the problem even greater. I watched my daughter the other day on the phone, 13. According to Amazon, she's like 25, according to them. So she can order what she wants. And I'm like, well, why don't you order? She's like, well, no, I'm not ordering from here. They say it's going to take a week to get here. It's like a week to get here. And then I told her this story. I'm like, I can remember a life when there was no internet. And the story I kind of tell people is, it's like, there was a time, if you wanted to know when Billy Joel's birthday was, you had no idea. You would just wander around, and every time you saw somebody maybe with a Billy Joel shirt, you'd be like, hey, you have to know when his birthday is. Like now, if you want to know, I can know it before, we hang up here. It's like one search. It's instant gratification. If we've got kids that are already like, I can't handle this unless it's a 2-day Prime delivery, or if I can't order it and go pick it up now. Now we've shortened the window, where it's like, because I've heard Amazon, with the new facility they're building here, is that the rumor is we're going to get Prime now, meaning once it's built, we'll have 1 hour delivery on certain items. How much closer can we race to the bottom here? And what expectation are we really setting? I know my 8-year-olds can't stand to watch a 30-second commercial. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting times, to say the least. So
I can sympathize with him on that 30 seconds. But no, it really is amazing. And I remember when I was doing research for projects and things at school. Remember Library Information Service? Remember that number you could call, and there'd be somebody at the library that would go research it for you and call you back and answer questions. Billy Joel's birthday is.
I can remember, and I still have, I think my mother gave them to me and we kept them. My wife's got it, the encyclopedia. Like you would go sit at the kitchen table and open it up, and you're writing your book report and pull in everything now. Yeah. It's
because I remember you used the copy out of the encyclopedia.
Word for word, and then I got smart, when they started having us do computers and they would look for like plagiarism, you'd submit papers. I found the hack to where all I had to do was at the very beginning of my paper and at the very end, I just put quotes and I put them in a white font. And so it thought the whole thing, so the system never got it, thought the whole thing was a quote. So probably shouldn't have told anybody that. But
it's things like that make you a good parent.
So, well, Garret, I appreciate the time. It's always fun. Love to have you, come back. We'll do it again sometime. You got more important things to do than sit around and talk to me. So I'll let you get back to it.
Very much. It was great connecting with you again. Good to see you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Awesome. You have a good day, sir.
You too. Take care.